So first of all, let me agree with you and give a shout out to my colleagues on the Transportation Committee: Philip Lawrence, Shannon Stubbs, Dan Albus, Leslyn Lewis was on the committee, and others that subbed in and provided support throughout the process. Because the Transport Committee looked at Bill C-5. Every bill, once it gets past second reading in the House of Commons, goes to a committee for study before it goes back to the House of Commons for the final sets of votes that pass it into legislation from the House's perspective before it goes to the Senate. And so it came to the Transport Committee, and we had a lot of work. So it was a very busy week last week as we looked at C-5. So what C-5 was the Liberal bill that had kind of two parts to it. One was to talk about one Canadian economy. So in other words, free trade within Canada. The other part was about building national or major projects in Canada. So let me parse that out a little bit, because we did close a lot of loopholes and make some amendments to legislation to make it much better, much more transparent, much more accountable. Ensure there were some guardrails that weren't in the original legislation as drafted, and I'll explain why that matters. But if we back up a little bit, okay, obviously, free trade in Canada is an important, and we talked about that in the election campaign. There's $200 billion of money of our economy that's left on the table because of trade barriers. And the last time that the Liberals introduced free trade within Canada, well, there were so many pages of exceptions, it really didn't move the needle at all. So with Bill C-5, they've introduced, we would call this a baby step towards free trade within Canada. Are we going to have free trade in Canada by Canada Day, as they promised? No. But it's a step forward. The other part to this was building major projects. And we've said that, as I said earlier, we have all these resources and a wealth of them. And it's important that we utilize that to diversify our economy. So right now, we're 77% dependent upon the US for trade. And obviously, given the new administration in the US, that's not where we want to be. And nor is it even prudent to put all our eggs in one basket. And so, when the Trudeau government said no to Germany, it said no to Japan, and 7, 8 other countries that wanted our liquefied natural gas, that was an opportunity to diversify our economy. And so we said it. Well, look, we've got all these resources. There's every reason that Canada should be booming. We should be fueling Europe right now. We should be fueling Asia. We've got all the critical minerals that are needed. We've got reliable energy supply to attract data centers, AI centers, good paying jobs. We're experts in nuclear. So yes, we are the party of building. We've been advocating that for years, building major projects. What the Liberals proposed, or the Carney government just proposed with C-5, they're going to look at approving that, major nation building projects. Well, I guess what we'd say is, look, you have built up all of these impediments to building these projects over the course of the last 10 years. Bill C-69, which is the Anti-Pipeline Anti-Development Act, which is the shipping ban, the oil and gas production cap, the industrial carbon tax. So we've put in all these impediments to actually doing things we need to make our country grow and prosper and build these projects. And yet you've proposed now this other bill that's just going to do this little work around that, instead of actually addressing the root cause, which is these impediments. Because we have it all, and we should be booming, and we don't need an act of parliament to tell us that we should be building nation-building projects. The private sector and smart, good people will do that if not faced with these impediments. So when they came forward with this Bill C-5, the problem when it was originally drafted is it allowed the federal cabinet to circumvent any law on the books federally. So that's a whole lot of power. And are the decisions on these multi-billion-dollar projects going to be made behind closed doors? If you are a person with business interests or investment interests, are you a party to approving projects that your investment portfolios may benefit from? So there were clearly some significant problems with that. And so we, together with opposition colleagues, were able to insert amendments that said, okay, look, here's 15 different pieces of legislation plus that you can't circumvent, including the Lobbying Act and the ethics legislation and the various pieces of transparency legislation, the criminal code, the Conflict of Interest Act, et cetera, so that there was that safeguard and those guardrails. And also that, the project that's being proposed to be approved needs to come to Parliament for review, and the consultation process needs to be reported upon, and the criteria for that needs to be presented to Parliament. And so there's at least some oversight as to what that is. And it's not just a decision made like behind closed doors and not this blank check. So yes, we are the party of building. We want to see this building happen. We agreed with the legislation. We made some amendments so that it had some safeguards for transparency, accountability, and frankly, actually getting some stuff done. But we still say, if you would actually get rid of the things that are stopping and holding Canada's economy back, we'd be further ahead.